Hey everyone, welcome to Patriot Soapbox, where I give you my commentary on the news of the day as reported by the Wall Street Journal. Let's get started. So first up, there's the drug company Merck and Co. acquired Arquel Inc. for about $2.7 billion in an attempt to increase its share of the cancer drug market, which is probably bound to draw criticism from the left any day now because they like to talk about how the healthcare industry likes to essentially what they call like rob people, or they're like vampires. Well, to be fair, no one like okay, they're fine. There are some nonprofit hospitals and drug makers, but once they're for profit, they don't say they're charity, so they're not obligated to offer these things for cheap. I mean, people say like drugs here are far more expensive than anywhere else in the world, and we pay more in healthcare than any other per capita than any other country in the world, which is true. But I think it's like about $8,000 per capita in the U.S. is spent on healthcare, or about 17% of GDP, far more than any other country. But they never said they were a charity. They never said they're in the business to help people. They're in the business to make money. So they're gonna do whatever it takes to, make money. And if the and even Republicans now are calling for price controls on drugs, which is a terrible idea, as Richard Nixon could tell you after he put price controls on oil, which only worsened the 1970s economy. So more price controls is not going to solve anything, anything, anything at all. So then, thankfully, Nancy Pelosi says that she sees a vote on the USMCA trade pact like in range, perhaps by the end of this year. So this is an agreement could come as early as Tuesday, which today is Tuesday, and I believe a deal was reached. So I don't have the specifics yet, but I'm sure tomorrow will. So, I mean, so finally, Nancy Pelosi can actually, put the impeachment aside to get some real political work done, not a partisan witch hunt, right? Surely. The uh, the city of Pensacola, Florida, another domestic news. Apparently they suffered a cyber attack that affected several computers around the time of just a few days after the shooting there at the naval base. And the shooting isn't technically a mass shooting because for mass shooting, 4 people, not counting the shooter, or more than 4 people have to die, and I say only 3 is still a lot of people to die, but it's not enough to qualify as mass there. We have plenty of emails, phone lines, computers, etc. have all been affected by the cyber attack. That ain't good. And then jumping back to impeachment, and though the so the corruption so I saw on CNN that they actually settled on these charges, on these articles of impeachment, but here in the paper, since it was written yesterday, and just delivered today because that's the newspaper's work. It says that they what they plan for as charges, and I'll repeat them again tomorrow because they're officially announced today. But they are charges against Trump are abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. They were considering obstruction of justice, but I don't think they include that one. But let's talk about that. First of all, abuse of power. Trump just said, "Hey, Ukraine, can you investigate some corruption there?" And then in a completely unrelated phone call said, "We may not give you aid." First of all, at least he gave them actual missiles to fight the Russians instead of giving them just blankets like Obama did. And second, Obama did far more than that, and he never asked about corruption, and he got away with all of it. Funny how things work, huh? So yeah, abuse of power, I'm thinking, not really. I mean, Trump didn't even get what he wanted, so it's not like, so really, he got the short end of the stick there. So, he tried, but it didn't technically succeed. There was no real crime involved. I mean, you can't punish someone for thinking about it, even if this was a crime, which it's not. You can't punish someone for just thinking about it or trying to. Like if you're right up to the building to go rob it and then decided, nah, maybe not, you couldn't be prosecuted because you didn't actually rob the building. Same thing here with Trump and the whole bribery situation. As far as obstruction of Congress, that's because he blocked aides from testifying before Congress. Can you stop and think about the idiocy of that charge? Obstruction of Congress for not participating in an impeachment inquiry. That'd be like someone getting in trouble. Like that'd be like someone at their job being like the boss considering firing them, and the person gets in trouble for not working with the boss and on the boss trying to fire him. Like, why would you cooperate with the people who are trying to kick you out of your job? That makes no sense. You'd want to keep your job, not help yourself lose it. Oi. But apparently they can consider it, obstruction of Congress. Maybe we need a new Congress and a new president. Then there's an article also about how the Iowa primaries may be Amy Klobuchar's last stand sort of thing, or her last chance to either become a front runner or drop out, because she and Pete Buttigieg, the other candidates, are trying to take the role of being the moderate alternative to the Democratic Party's left. Problem is that spot's filled by Joe Biden, wildly popular candidate still. I mean, he's slumped a little bit in the polls, but he's still pretty popular. Problem is, Pete Buttigieg is sort of ahead of him in just the Iowa polls, not nationwide. Klobuchar, however, is sort of back of the pack. And, I mean, she has somewhat of a chance, and it's technically, I mean, she has a few percentage points of support in the polls. But even if any of the moderate Democrats win, they'll still take a devastating toll on the country. But she is definitely better than Elizabeth Warren. I'll give her that. But Iowa, like as I said before, Obama wasn't doing very well in the polls until he won Iowa. Then he shot to the front. So, because again, it's sort of the first states are sort of like a bellwether for the rest of the country. They kind of predict where it's going to go, because people see the candidate who wins, they're like, let's vote for that guy. He looks like a winner. That's the general mood of things. And so Klobuchar can win, or at least do well in Iowa. She can put her name out there again, because really she's sort of fallen into obscurity in the news. But if she loses in Iowa, then her campaign is doomed. She might as well resign, and she might as well drop out of the race. But I mean, she could win, because that's right next to her home state of Minnesota, and she's the Midwestern Democrat who Democrats think they need to beat Trump, because that's that voting bloc is who they need to win back. So who knows? I mean, she might do pretty well. I don't think she will, but if she doesn't, then she's out. And then let's see. But speaking of Buttigieg, though, he's seems to be maintaining his popularity, his newfound success, and he and his fans seem pretty unfazed by liberal critiques of him. Like, there's critiques over his job as mayor, over his healthcare plan, over his college tuition thing. Being a moderate, or as moderate as you can get as a Democrat, he doesn't support Medicare for all. He supports public buy-in, and as far as college goes, he didn't want to make all college free. He wants, I believe his plan is community college and maybe public college free tuition, but not in private school, definitely. Not private colleges like Harvard or Stanford. Public schools like Berkeley or any of those schools. So, I mean, that's moderate. I mean, it's still pretty liberal and far left, but it's moderate, relative to where the middle is in the Democratic Party. Yeah, they don't seem to mind the criticism of him. So, I mean, I think that given the poll, as 2016 showed, polls can get it abysmally wrong sometimes. But fair enough, if the polls are correct, then Buttigieg could be a serious contender, because he's lagging behind the big three: Sanders, Warren, Biden, nationwide. But he's doing well in Iowa. So who knows? That could just be because he's Midwestern, but. Again, you never know. Russia went and got, in a completely unrelated news, Russia got itself kicked out of the Olympics again, and out of the World Cup for 4 years. It's supposed to stretch up until the 2022 Winter Olympics. So after those games, then Russia will be allowed back in, because you guessed it, more steroids and doping. And so kind of like in 2018 when they got in trouble for this, the Russian athletes can participate. It's just like the Russian officials can't come to the Olympics. They can't wave the Russian flag at the Olympics. They can't sing the Russian anthem at the Olympics. I think they do, and I think for these candidates, so yeah, the Russians have any Russian athletes that have been cleared by the Olympic Committee is not doped up. They can compete, but they have to do it under a neutral banner. And I think for these neutral athletes, if I'm not mistaken, they have like the Olympic anthem play instead of the Russian one. Russian athletes turned out in the Winter Olympics, but that's because like winter sports is Russia's thing. Snow, their winter conditions, the reason why Napoleon and Hitler didn't conquer them. So, yeah, there'll definitely be less Russian athletes than usual because most of them be like, we can't compete on our own flag. Forget this. Just wait till the next one. So yeah, I honestly don't. On one hand, I can see like why steroids are considered cheating or any drug really, but answer me this: how is taking steroids or any other kind of drug cheating in sports? But if you take things like supplements or whatever, or like to try to like quote unquote naturally boost your performance, you're still using some chemical bottled up in a little pill to boost your performance. So really, in the realm of sports, I don't exactly get the difference between like I don't know where do they draw the line between like steroids are bad and supplements are good? Like how, really, it's like taking some other chemical to boost your performance. That's I mean I'm not saying that like steroids should be legal. I'm just saying like in sports I'm just saying there's a case to be made for it because really, where do you draw the line, right? And finally, there's the I mentioned before that Adam Schiff released some of the phone records of a journalist who was investigating the Ukraine controversy, and he had made some calls to Ukrainian officials and Trump's lawyers like Rudy Giuliani, and now the Wall Street Journal allowed him to write an op-ed. His name is John Solomon. So Schiff released his records, like his phone calls, some ones from Giuliani and another Trump lawyer, and then from Devin Nunes. So the thing about Devin Nunes is he's a Republican in the House of Representatives. Guess what his job is? So he's on the Intelligence Committee, just like Schiff, and he's the ranking member. So the way they do these things in Congress, like for the various committees, it usually ends up being like whatever the chairman of the committees usually ends up being the party that's in charge, but there's still the ranking member who's the highest, who's like the official with the most seniority in that committee from the other party. So Nunes is therefore Schiff's top rival, and should the Republicans take back the House in 2020, he would probably become the unless he said, hey, I don't wanna, he'd probably become the new chairman, and Schiff would become the new ranking member. This means he's a big political rival. And so when Schiff's investigating Trump for abuse of power, he's abusing his own power as chairman to target a political rival. The exact same thing he's accusing Trump of doing with Joe Biden. And so Solomon says that like when the surveillance state exposes a journalist and his sources, as Schiff did to Mr. Solomon, there's a sort of like as he puts it, a quote unquote instant chilling effect because it's because like there are constitutional questions in there, like the Constitution comes into conflict here. Like he says that like for a long time, like for pretty much all of American history, it's been widely accepted that journalists, the clergy, and lawyers should have some sort of special protection when it comes to privacy rights because they all have some sort of constitutional question attached to them. Like if you meddle too much, like lawyers, you have a right to have a lawyer. The clergy, freedom of religion, and journalists, freedom of the press. So so Schiff dumped the phone calls of private phone calls of a journalist, a political rival, and two lawyers. So, but really they represent Trump because they're his lawyers. So like they are Trump in a way. So he dumped their records into the public domain. That reeks of political corruption that the Constitution is meant to bar. So, as I said before, and I'll say it again. If the Democrats want to accuse someone of abuse of power, they can at least make sure they're not abusing their own power. I mean, the old saying, "He that sins casts the first stone." It doesn't, contrary to popular belief, it doesn't mean like if you're they only judge people if you're perfect. It means like when you judge someone, make sure you're doing it right. Like make sure you, like when you judge someone, make sure you're not incorrectly judging them. Like, in other words, give them a fair trial. So when they're doing the same thing, so when Schiff is doing the same thing he's accusing Trump of, arguably a little bit worse because he's actually getting what he wants, and Trump isn't. That's reason to put the whole impeachment inquiry into question. That's all I got for you in this episode of Picture with Soapbox. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great daily content.